The Front Row Back Row podcast is a show where two grad school buddies discuss physical therapy entrepreneurship. I helped guide a company to an 8-figure exit, and I'm now starting my own mobile company. Brian grew his mobile practice to 4 clinics, and he's now doing $1 million in revenue. Join us as we help you grow your own business. Hello and welcome to the Front Row Back Row podcast. My name is Dr. Owen Campbell, and with me as always is Dr. Brian Wolf, and together we are Physiogrowth. So today we are going to be talking about the dreaded scenario for anybody hiring a physical therapist is that the PT is leaving and they are trying to steal patients. Everybody has been through it. Either you are the one stealing the patients, either intentionally or not, hopefully not. Or if you've been an owner and an employer or a manager for another person at any time, you've gone through this where somebody leaves, they're not moving, they're not, doing it, getting out of, your particular realm of therapy. They're actually going to a competitor. It's a touchy situation, right? So we're going to talk through, how different practice owners can deal with this, different levels, things like that. And really what your mindset should be, not only just in the process of somebody leaving, but also in hiring, right? And where you can really overcome this fear and use it to your advantage. So, Brian, I know we have one of our members of our mastermind group that is currently dealing with this internal struggle.
Yeah.
And it's pretty interesting. So, as we go, obviously I'm not going to sit here and be like, it's this therapist, but it's a cash practice, and she's built it to the point that she's got a location, she's got 1 or 2 providers, and one of those providers is leaving. And very nice, gave her big amount of notice, not hostile in any way. Cause I'll tell you this from someone who's managed bigger companies there. I have actually had a hostile person, and that is very much grounds for immediate termination. When somebody's just going right up and saying, this is where I'm going, come to me. Like my boss fired them immediately. But she did the whole, like, I like you guys, I'm just going somewhere else. But let's be honest, she's getting phone numbers, right? So what I know you have been in both the cash world and the insurance world. So like kind of walk me through what your strategy in this situation is. If somebody gives you notice and in the back of your head, you're saying, man, I know they're going to take some of my patients.
Yeah. I mean, I think that here's the thing. I think the reality is for cash practice, this is a little more of a reality than I think for a, insurance-based practice. It's a little more of a perception. Mainly because the threshold to start your own practice is a little bit easier, right? When it comes to cash-based practice. So, look, at the end of the day, if you're nervous that your patients are going to get quote unquote stolen, right, by somebody, you got to think of it from this perspective. If the employee is somebody who's leaving you and taking your people, it's no different than if someone was leaving you, not taking your people, and one of your other competitors took them, right?
Mm-hmm.
So this comes down to a customer acquisition problem. You have to focus on getting new blood, getting new patients all the time. So it's no different than if you have bad reviews, bad stuff. We had a therapist last year who just didn't want to be where we were. So she didn't want to be in this scenario. She took the job. She wanted to, again, I've told people that I consult in the MLS, and she wanted to work full time in the MLS and thought this me as a stepping stone to jump her into professional sports, which, by the way, she did use and did get a job in professional sports. So good for her. That's great. But the problem was in the 6 months that she was working for us, because that's all she lasted with us, she was just turning and burning patients left and right, just discharging them. Wasn't giving great care, wasn't listening, because even if she thinks she was giving great care, the aura that was around her was, I don't want to be here. And so that permeated through her to everybody, including the patients, right? We had lots of complaints. And so the answer becomes, when that happens, what do you do? And the answer is, you just got to go get more patients. I mean, you got to deal with that problem. I'm not like this dealt with itself. She left and, gave her notice and left, which was fine. It did us a favor. However, on the flip side, you get more patients, and we're going to do more visits across the board than we did last year. And that's why you can sleep well at night, right? So for those of you, I think what's scarier is, I mean, this, Owen, if you hire another person and build that person up, it hurts the smaller you are, right? Mm-hmm. So the bigger you can get, the better it is. So nevertheless, man, you got to keep building. That's really what it comes down to. Just keep honing in your systems, and so that you can scale properly, keep optimizing different things, and keep just really building on your reputation. Um, because if somebody leaves and takes your people, you need to be able to refill those butts in those seats,
Well,
right?
and that's where I think it's important. A few things that you touched on there is the moat, right? Is the
Yep.
business term of insurance, and having a location is a much bigger barrier to entry if all your patients are used to a location and
Yeah.
taking insurance, because they can't do that versus a mobile
Great
cash
point.
practice, right?
Exactly.
I think that's pretty important. Then the other thing I think that really, like you said, man, if they're not taking them, the other practice in town is going to. If
For
you
sure.
aren't, putting your foot on the gas all the time for marketing, right? And I mean, for cash-based PT, marketing is you're a marketer at this point. Like, you understand the business that you're in is getting more patients because you're asking them to also pay outside of their premium, right?
Yep.
Their insurance premium. But even in the insurance world, like, the biggest thing I would always tell managers is that you create your own reality. So if you want this to feel like a breakup and you want it to feel like they're personally going against you and make it all sad and, oh my God, what's going on? And then use this. I always told them, as their senior manager, I was like, I'm not taking that as an excuse, right? Like, that is you trying to blame an external thing on why you're not getting more people. And yeah, people are going to leave, right? But they're
Yeah.
going to leave if that person goes and works in the hospital, because they're going to be like, well, yeah, I liked her and it's kind of awkward going to the other guy, so whatever. Now, will maybe it's 50% versus 25% leave, right? Where if it's, somebody down the street versus they go to a hospital, but it's something that I would tell our managers all the time. I know for me, when I hire an employee, if you operate out of a position of being afraid of that, then why are you in business, right?
100%.
You should be able to say, cool, I'm still strong enough that I can hire another person because my place to work at is awesome. I am
Perfectly
a
said, man.
great person to manage. I am an awesome business owner and I am better at marketing than they will ever be. So cool, have fun, right? And in those situations, when I've had people who've left to start a competing practice, I would just say to them, look, you know, if you poach people, I fire you. Right now, Arizona's a right to work state, so I can do that. Right. Connecticut, California, New York might be a little bit different. But you just have that understanding of like, I like you, but the reason we know each other is because I'm giving you money that I'm making.
Yeah,
Right. So, like,
for sure.
don't F with that.
It's also a good reason. It's also a good reason to always be hiring, right? Always
Yeah.
be interviewing and always be hiring people. It's so funny because some people are like, well, like I'll give you guys an example. We have a physical therapist that's leaving our company this week. Actually, it's her last week, and she went down to part time a little while ago, and she was like, "Well, I noticed that you're always like bringing new physical therapists in here, and like, what's that about?" And blah blah blah. And I was like, I mean, why does that matter to you? Right? Like, what does it matter if I'm bringing in new PTs and hiring and trying to grow? And the reality is, a lot of people will get upset with the fact that you're growing and changing and trying to build your business, scale your business,
Yep.
right? And this
100%.
person, guess what? This person then gave her full notice that I think it's time for me to move on from the company. That was it. Why? She's starting her own cash practice. Do I care? No. She can go. And by the way, it's not far from any of our practices, but it's a cash based practice. And to Owen's point, we have our own location. She does not. We take insurance. She does not. Like, I know these people aren't going anywhere. And a lot of these people, again, one other recommendation I would say to people who are in cash practice or not cash practice, quite frankly, when it comes to insurance, is it's good for all, whether you're directors within a business or whether you're an owner in a business, to make sure that you're keeping in touch with your people, right? That you're sending emails, that you're calling people, that you're I had a longtime client of mine today that called my cell. I picked up and I talked to her, and she was like, "Who do you recommend within your organization to deal with this?" It's son had a tough injury, right? Like
Mhm.
dislocated knee for those physical therapists.
Ugh.
And those of you who know that, it's a multi-leg problem, right? Blah, 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 in the ortho world. It's tough. Drop
Yeah.
foot, perennial nerve damage, whole thing.
Oh.
So when she called me, I was like, I'll oversee and be part of the case, but this is who I recommend. This is who I want to be part of, right? Talk to the doctor, coordinated with everybody. It took me 45 minutes to do all that. But guess what? That person had seen that those people had seen and worked with some other therapists, one of them who had left to go to another cash-based practice, not far down the road.
Mhm.
But again, loyalty is a big piece for people. And as you're longer in business and as you grow, it's going to matter. And these people matter to me in terms of like the family. And I let them know that, and they know that, and they know they always can call me anytime, right? For that kind
Yeah.
of stuff. So I think it's important that practice owners understand that they have to maintain relationships with people, right? And maintain relationships with their customers.
And if you like this information, please, the only way this podcast grows, this tactical information, is if you tell a friend. So if you like it, please make sure you tell another PT or anybody in the healthcare space that could benefit from this. So
Follow us,
the other
please.
the thing that I want to go over with that, I think that's that's important, is that follow up, right? So I was talking to another practice owner in our area, and they were very much in the insurance space. All I've ever done is call doctors, and no direct to consumer or anything, right? And they're like, well, we're flattening out, and I don't know. And I could have went into this whole thing about like, well, patients are more educated, they're searching their own. A lot of the physicians now will just say, I don't know, find your own PT. And they just have a do not call list. They don't have a recommendation list anymore, at least around here. So I said, but I was like, did you like, what do you do for your former patients? Like, you've been in business for like 20 years. Like, who are you calling? Right?
Yeah.
How you're nurturing those patients, making sure they're like, oh, well, I don't email anybody. Or, oh, I was like, the most valuable thing you have is your list. Right. And now in insurance, like you said, people are making decisions on location and do you take my insurance and loyalty. Right. Like, they
Yeah.
could be as loyal to you as possible, but if you said it's $500 a session to work with me, they're going to say that's fantastic. But most people probably won't be able to do that. Right. But if you keep everything, and everything's kind of the same, and that's a cash paying person who's used to paying cash, but then they leave that therapist, but then they keep getting an email from the owner every month or so, right? Eventually they're just going to name switch. They're just going to associate not the person, but they're going to associate the practice. And I think that the biggest reason that cash pay PTs get burned so hard by this is that they look at the job as, well, I just get to outsource this to somebody else, and cool, you figure out scheduling, and give them your cell phone number and like whatever. Yeah, how are they doing? Like, that good? Okay, cool. What you need to be is, you got to be on that patient, right? That patient is your patient that someone else is seeing, right? And you have to be able to say, okay, let's touch base when that person's getting treatment every 2 weeks. You should be having a phone call with them and saying, hey, how do you like this at my business, right? Even
Yep.
though it's another person, so that they know the big dog in the room is you, right?
Yep.
So there's little strategies that you can do. Now, does that solve all your problems? No, but I've seen both happen, where one person's very on the patients and she has contractors, the other person was not. And I'll give you a guess of who's still in business today. So
100%. That's the key. I think that outreach is so important, and to have
Mhm.
that. So I think it's essential. You know what I mean? So yeah, guys, I mean, listen, if you're ever interested in learning more about this stuff, please, check us out at physio-growth.com. Our mentorship group, we talk about this all the time. We come up with different, help people troubleshoot different problems they're having in their business and grow. I think personally, this is one of those ones where people get scared, right? They get scared, and
Yeah.
oh my God, what am I going to do? How am I going to do that? And I think one of the things that Owen and I have done is we've gone through this a million times, and say, listen, we understand the freak out, and there's times to freak out, and it totally makes sense. And you can freak out with us, right? That is always good. And we can give you some tactical advice to help you make you feel better. But yeah, I think if there's anything, there's an old term that comes with this, is keep moving forward. And the reality is, you have to keep moving forward regardless of what's going on with your employees. Whether it's hiring new employees, people will come in and go. You can't control that stuff. I use the analogy all the time. I'm a huge New York Yankees fan. For those who don't know, the Yankees just lost Juan Soto, right? It was a devastating, horrible thing. They're still 3-1 as a start, right? Like they move on. We're still going to play. We're just because we lost this guy doesn't mean we're not going to keep playing. And the only way that we lose is if we stop playing. So the answer is, you get new players, you move on, and no one would consider the New York Yankees an unstable organization, right? So when people say, "Oh, there's lots of turnover to the unstable organization," that's also a farce. I just think that's a weird thing we're all taught in school that doesn't make any sense. Pooping on our own profession, it's so dumb. But that's
Yeah.
me. That's me just in general saying, work on getting more patients, work on finding good employees, work on building systems to scale your business. It's always going to win.
If you want a different perspective, I'll give you one very quick anecdote from our group. One
Nice.
member was like, I don't know if I want to have this conversation with this person and like all this. And we were all talking about how much I don't like it. And then I got on the mic and I was like, I love these conversations. And it's because I've literally done it so much. And I've seen it long term about how having a good crucial conversation with an underperforming employee or someone who's leaving or whatever, it's actually going to benefit the organization. So
For sure.
if you do this enough, if you haven't done it enough, you got to get in our group because we can tell you about it. If you have done it enough, then you're probably a sicko like me that loves those like, business building but awkward conversations. So
Yeah,
uh,
totally agree. Totally agree. And
yeah,
I think it's well worth it. Well worth it when you're trying to push forward. So
there you go.
love it.
All right, my friend. So hope this was helpful for everybody, and we will see you on the other side.
See ya.